So to my shock and amazement, we actually had the Wave 2 Micromasters show up in my neck of the woods for the Transformers Siege line. And I would be remiss if I didn't pick up these guys. It is Laserbeak and Ravage, and they make up the Decepticon Spy Patrol. And they will be our focus in the latest GotBot True review. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share, and of course subscribe. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, Transformers Collectors, NL, and of course, look for me everywhere across social media. And this is Ravage and Laserbeak. And they're small, real small, but they're also kind of awesome in their own way. I love the coloring. And I kind of love the molding. Granted, they're obviously supposed to be cybertronian modes, but maybe that's okay considering how sort of fantastic both of these turned out. Granted, one might be a little bit better than the other, but we'll talk about that when we head over to the table and take a closer look at these guys. And yes indeed, here we have the Soundwave Spy Patrol made up of Ravage and Laserbeak. Who knew that they had a specific name? Anyway, we're going to kind of jump right into things and begin by taking a quick look at the packaging. And as you might expect, it's packaging. We have Ravage and Laserbeak up here on the set. It is what it is. When we turn it around, of course, we have the product images on the back, and we show the interconnectivity, so to speak, with Soundwave. And we have another example of the rather wonderful instructions that have been coming with Siege figures. And here we can see that they turn into Sonic Surge, drone, armor. They turn into their cassettes and they go on like a shield. They have different stats though. Laserbeak seems to be a little bit of a weaker shield with better fire blast. I'm not sure how a shield is supposed to fire blast. I don't know. It reflects back the laser beam. I don't know. Ravage seems to be stronger, but doesn't have quite the same range. They're cassettes. And here we have that ever familiar Decepticon duo in their recognizable bird and panther, I guess, mode. And Ravage, I assume, is like Cybertronian Ravage, I guess, because that seems to be the whole thing with this Siege line. Laserbeak is definitely Cybertronian Laserbeak because we saw him in the very first episode of the series, and this is how he looked. A little bit different, but I kind of like it. Like, I like the look of it. We're going to look at each of these individually and kind of compare them to other iterations of the characters. Let's begin with Laserbeak. And I'm holding Laserbeak like this so that you can see just how fantastic he is. By the way, one piece of transformation that I neglected to do here was to fold up this piece over his back. I guess it gives him like his back blasters, I suppose. It has a nice, get his head down out of the way, it has a nice Decepticon tampograph on it. We have beautiful red and silver paint on the wings. The yellow is done very nicely on his visor. Like, I dig it. The main body and his feet are red plastic and gray plastic, but this has a surprising amount of paint applications on it as far as I'm concerned. As such, I'm going to say paint is a 10. And here we have three little Laserbeaks all in a row. The highly stylized Fall of Cybertron version that turns into a data disc. The Titans Return version that turns into a tablet and a tank, I suppose. There's a lot of black on the body of that one. And then right in between them we have the smallest iteration of Laserbeak, the Siege version, but it's also the one iteration in the modern era that does turn into a cassette. And honestly, its coloring is easily the best. That said, for my personal purposes, I'm going to kind of keep the Titans Return version in my personal collection. It's what works for me, but believe me when I tell you, there's a great argument to be made for the Siege version. So what about the transformation for this little guy? So far we're saying a 10 and a 10. He's doing pretty great. Well, the transformation is interesting yet simple. We begin by bringing the whole back section back, straightening out the head, and we can flip that back as well. Then we can close in the two wings, and there's kind of the front of our cassette mode. We turn it around and bring up a foot and bring up a foot, and you can take out if you have nails better than mine. There. You can take out that little peg. And here he is, serving as armor for his leader, the glorious Megatron, who I looked at in episode 495. I also looked at how I removed the battle damage on him and a little bit of extra custom work that I did with him in episode 499. Laserbeak can also go on Megatron's arm. Wait, that's the wrong Laserbeak. I mean, this one. Wait, no. No, that's still not the right one, and looks kind of awkward. I mean, this one. And yes, this looks like an excellent size. It scales really nicely, and it's secure. It's not just laid there. Using that peg that I pointed out when we converted him to his shield mode, the same peg that held him on Megatron's arm, is the same peg that you use here. You can put it in the forearm while he's in bird mode. Granted, the feet are still folded up, but basically it pegs in there and it stays on. Presumably, Laserbeak can land on anybody's arm that has a 5mm port on the forearm. In fact, Laserbeak can work in any 5mm port, such as this one here, kind of on Megatron's shoulder blade, like that shoulder backpack piece. However, Megatron might want to watch out, because the last thing he would want to have happen is cybertronian bird poop kind of drizzle down over his back, because I gotta believe that that wouldn't be easy to clean off. So a transformation for Laserbeak, honestly, it's a 10. Easy 10. Laserbeak is a 10. It is a perfect Laserbeak. I mean, I don't know how much you would really want from a little bird Decepticon, but the conversion is smooth. I guess the requisite articulation is there. The colors are tremendous. He is a solid Laserbeak. Now what about Ravage? Now, unlike Laserbeak, Ravage has a more storied history in terms of modern iterations. We have here in front of us, of course up front, the Siege Ravage, the new one that's out. Just kind of behind him is the Fall of Cybertron Data Disc Ravage. We have the Classics Ravage that came with Hound, the Titan's Return Ravage, and the Device Label Ravage. Some of these have been more successful outings for the character than others. For me personally, I'm a fan of the Device Label one. Granted, this is a KO of that, but it's still a great version of Ravage. But I could see arguments for the other ones. The Classics one is a good version. The FOC one is not great. It's alright. I mean, if you're, in for that FOC, Soundwave and his data discs, like, he's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. It's just, he's odd. And then we have the very lackluster Titan's Return one. I don't like it. I just don't like it. So in terms of coloring, the newest iteration of Ravage is pretty fantastic. No, it's not a 10 like Laserbeak, but it's well up there. We have the little missile pods kind of back on his back legs, and they're painted silver. His eyes are still painted red for as small as this is. We have some purple detailing on the back. However, his lower legs are gray, and I guess that's okay, but I almost wish that we had one more little paint app on his feet to make them black. It's not bad though. And I wish we had a tail. This version doesn't have a tail. I don't know, maybe on Cybertron Panthers don't have tails. I don't know. I would say it has good paint apps. It's definitely Ravage, there's no mistaking it. It's probably about an 8.5. Oh, what about that articulation? Well, the legs can go like forward and back. They can kind of bend at that knee forward, I guess. Let's see if I can show this better. These legs can go forward and back. All the legs can go, no, the back ones don't really go out to the side in this mode. The front ones do. The head, it can go like up and down. The jaw doesn't open on this one or anything. It's functional, like it gives you what you need for Ravage, but is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. Again, I'd say about an 8.5. It's alright. So much like Laserbeak, the conversion here is interesting but straightforward. Unlike Laserbeak, there are more moving parts, and as such, that means there's more of a chance of things knocking into each other if you don't follow the order of operations very specifically. It might not be quite as elegant unless you know exactly what steps to follow. So without any further ado, let's kind of run through them. We begin by closing up his hind legs on both sides, and then we can rotate his hind legs out so that they're like this. I do find it helps if you kind of bring the front legs forward. Then you can bring the I guess panther head all the way down. Using this gray piece here, we can fold this up all the way, and then we can flip out these legs. And we have the lower part of our cassette done. Then we can open out these two pieces, and you can now roll them down into position. If you didn't lift them forward, this is where you're going to have pieces knock into one another. So we bring those down. Then the only thing we have left to do is to deal with the front paws. And there's a little notch on the paw, and it will come down over a little black tab down, kind of right there. And it does lock into position. It's a soft lock, but you'll feel it. And in the end, here you have Ravage in his cassette mode. If you want, you can come back here and there's a peg. This peg is in the back of Ravage's neck. And now he's all ready to be armor. He too can serve as an arm shield. Of course, I will note that on my particular copy of Megatron, Laserbeak fits very snugly. This guy, not so much. It's pretty loose, but I assume that will be a case of, you know, tolerances will vary. So while Ravage's conversion is still pretty good, it's not quite as good as Laserbeak's. Again, I'm going to say the conversion for Ravage is about an 8.5. Overall, Ravage is an 8.5. Laserbeak is a 10. The overall score for this set is somewhere around a 9.25. It's a great set, but the stronger character is definitely Laserbeak. That being said, I have a different idea in mind. For me, I'm going to keep the device label Ravage as my Ravage. I'm going to keep the Titans Return Laserbeak as my Laserbeak because that fits for me and my collection. So what am I going to do with these guys? Stick around because I have a plan. I like the molds. I just like them as different characters. And here we are once again, and it's a good set overall. It's a solid set. I'm not going to use these guys for my Ravage and Laserbeak, but I can certainly see the argument for replacing everything you have and going with these two as your Ravage and Laserbeak because they're very functional, they're painted really well, they're decently articulated for as small as they are. Fun transformation. Granted, you have to be okay with Laserbeak really having the head from that first few minutes of the very first G1 episode, but, you know, you're not going to mistake that this is Laserbeak and Ravage by any stretch of the imagination, and I do really like the mold. I just have, or molds, I guess I should say, I just have different plans for them. We'll talk about that a little way down the line. As a version of Laserbeak and Ravage, they're great. As Transformers toys, they're great. I think they're going to get overlooked, but I certainly hope not. Laserbeak is definitely the stronger of the two, but while Ravage has kind of had a spotty past in terms of good and not so good figures, I'm looking at you, Titans Return Ravage, I have to say that this is definitely one of the better ones for as small and diminutive as it might be. Anyway, let me know what you think about these guys and which kind of modern day iterations of Laserbeak and Ravage will stand as your representations of those characters. You know I love to hear from you guys. As always, please hit that subscribe button. It helps me out so very much. I thank you for giving me some of your very valuable time, and I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit right here inside the videos.